So I looked at all the real estate numbers from this past year, and I did a bunch of research about what happened here in Boise. And I learned a number of enlightening things about the Boise real estate market. So the first thing that I learned is that the Boise explosion is behind us. So I found some interesting data from U-Haul, of all places. Every year, U-Haul releases its data on where its trucks went. And that gives an interesting snapshot of what is happening in the nation as a whole. Where are people moving from and where are they moving to? So according to U-Haul's data, the state that saw the biggest population growth this past year was not Idaho, but South Carolina. Number 2 on the list was Texas, North Carolina number 3, Florida, Tennessee, and coming in at number 10 was our state, Idaho. Now let me just make a couple comments about this list. South Carolina climbed 3 spots from last year. So they were number 3, they're number 1 now. Texas is number 2, but was number 1 for the previous 3 years and has been number 1 or number 2 since 2016. Now Idaho has slowed some. We were near the top for the past several years, but we're down to number 10 now. And what was surprising to me was that Washington is number 7 on this list. And this was surprising to me, especially because of all the riots that we saw in 2020, 2021. Seattle was a total chaos, and so we saw a lot of people moving out of Washington. It's currently number 7 on the list, according to U-Haul's data. Now, before I move on to talk more specifically about Idaho, I have to mention the bottom 5 states, according to U-Haul. So coming in at number 45 was Illinois, Pennsylvania number 6, New York 47th slowest growth in the nation, and number 50, the very last state, you guessed it, the state of California. California has seen the greatest net loss of movers for the 5th consecutive year. And to that, I just have to say congratulations, Gavin Newsom. You have been 50th place for 5 years in a row now. Now, time out for just a second. Even though the governor, I think, has been doing a terrible job in California, that doesn't mean the people should suffer. And so I wanted to say that my thoughts and my prayers really are with all of you in the Los Angeles area who have seen this terrible fire just rip through the area, burn down thousands of buildings. My thoughts and my prayers really are with you guys. I couldn't help but think to myself, gee, I wonder which kind of states people are fleeing from and going to. So I put an overlay, a political map overlay on these states, and I think we see a pretty clear conclusion. 9 out of the top 10 states that saw the biggest growth this past year are red states, and 4 out of the bottom 5 states that saw the worst growth rate in the United States are blue states. U-Haul also has some information on which cities are experiencing the largest growth. Dallas, Texas was number 1, Charlotte, North Carolina, number 2, and then you can see the rest of the cities there. Boise, the Boise Metro came in number 17, which I thought was interesting because Boise really is a small, big city. Now, according to U-Haul, Florida has 7 of the top 25 growth metros. Texas has 5, 3 of which are in the top 10. And then North Carolina has 3 metros in the list. So if you're looking for a city to buy property in, maybe as an investment, Dallas, Texas might not be a bad idea. You might check out Charlotte, North Carolina as well. So to summarize the data from U-Haul, Idaho is the 10th fastest growing state. Boise is the 17th fastest growing metro. And people are fleeing blue states and moving to red states. So what all this means for Idaho is that the population explosion is behind us. Idaho is still growing, but it's growing at a more healthy rate, and I think this will be good for Idaho moving forward. The second thing that I learned is that lots of young people are interested in Idaho. Now, the Idaho Census Bureau just released its statistics a couple weeks ago, and they had some interesting data there. First of all, the Idaho population just surpassed 2 million people. So we currently are at 2,001,619 people here in the state. Our population grew by 30,500 people this past year, which is a 1.5% growth rate. Now, if you look at the growth rate and you compare it to the past several years, you see that our growth rate has slowed down some. Last year was about the same as this year, 1.4% in 2023. But look at where that number was in 2022. about half or double of where it was last year. So we grew at about half of the rate that we grew in 2022. 2021, the population of Idaho grew by 2.1%. So you could ask the question, why is it that Idaho is growing at a slower pace? And the answer is not that people are not interested in Idaho anymore. Really, the main reason is because of the economy. So according to the Department of Labor economist Jan Rosner here in Idaho, she says that it's really a result of the cost of living, housing, economic anxiety, and just generally speaking, people are not changing jobs as frequently as they were during the COVID years. Now let's look at those numbers a little bit more closely. The Idaho population grew naturally by only 6,000 people. And what natural growth is you just take the Idaho births and you subtract the Idaho deaths, and that gives you the natural growth of the state, which means the rest of the growth is from incoming migration, or 86% of our growth is all from people from outside of the state moving into Idaho. Now, since 2020, Idaho's population has increased by 8.2%, or 152,000 people. So according to the Idaho Census Bureau, Idaho has the 7th highest population growth rate in the country. Now, when it comes to total population, Idaho is ranked number 38. So overall, Idaho does not have that many people compared to the rest of the states. As far as the child population rate is concerned, though, we are ranked number 7. We have the 7th highest rate of children in the state. 23.4% of our total population is children. And the median age of our residents here in Idaho is 37.8 years, which is the 8th lowest in the country. The third thing that I learned is that we are at the limit of what people can afford here in the Treasure Valley. Just this past year, 8,310 homes were sold in Ada County. Now, if you look at that number and you compare it to where we were in the years leading up to COVID, so a normal year, that number is about 20% lower than where it was back then. And why is it that we've seen a 20% decrease in sales from a normal year? I think you know the reason. The reason is the interest rate. The interest rate simply has made it harder for people to buy homes, and some people have pumped the brakes and sat on the sidelines simply because they can't afford to make their monthly payment. Now, I dug a little bit deeper and I noticed that 64% of all homes sold in Ada County this past year were existing homes, and 35.4% were new builds, new construction. Now, that's the lowest percentage of existing homes that we have seen in the past 10 years. On average, about 70% of all homes in the Treasure Valley are existing homes. So why is this? Is this significant? Possibly. It's possible that we've seen a slight bump in new construction purchases because of builder incentives. So just to give you an example, last month, December of 2024, CBH, the largest builder in the valley, Corey Barton Homes, offered a $25,000 promo on all of its homes. So at closing, you got a $25,000 concession that you can use for whatever you want. Hubble offered a $35,000 promo back in October. And so what people are doing is that they're using that concession to buy down their interest rate. So that makes it attractive to a buyer because the main issue that buyers are facing is affordability. If they can buy down their interest rate and get their monthly payment down, they're ready to pay a little bit more for a new home, whereas they probably would have gone for an existing home if we weren't in such a high interest rate market. Hey, if this video has been helpful so far, please tap that like button. I would greatly appreciate it. The fourth thing that I learned is that everybody loves Star and Northwest Meridian. These are the two areas to watch. Those two areas are booming. And let me just show you what is happening out in Star. Back in 2016, 4.42% of all homes sold in Ada County were sold in Star. Look at where that number is today. Just this last year, 13.97%, so 14% of all homes sold in Ada County were sold in Star. That's a 9.5% increase in about 8 years. That place is booming. In fact, 29% of all new homes sold in Ada County were sold in Star. Northwest Meridian is also cranking, not to the same level as Star, but it's also up there. Just this past year, 15.23% of all homes were in Ada County were sold in Northwest Meridian, and that amounts to about 19% of all new homes. So those two areas definitely are booming. Those are the two areas to keep your eye on in the coming years. Now, people aren't moving to Star and Northwest Meridian because those are the cheapest areas. I thought it might be helpful for you to see which areas, how each area ranks by price. The most expensive area, you probably guessed it, is Eagle. The median there this past quarter was $897,400. North Boise came in at number 2, Northeast Boise, North Boise number 3, and then Northwest Boise, Meridian, etc. So Star came in number 6, and the cheapest area this past quarter was the Boise Benj. The median price there this past quarter was $436,925. And this leads me to the fifth thing that I learned this year, and that is that $400,000 to $700,000 really is the sweet spot for most people who are buying a home here in the Treasure Valley. About 65% of all homes purchased in the Valley fall within that range. As you can see from the chart here, those are the only price ranges that had double digits of market share last year. And then the sixth thing that I learned is that I don't think we're gonna see prices fall like we'd all love to see. Now, the reason that I say this is that we didn't really see prices fall this whole past year. Even though we saw a high interest rate throughout most of the year, we still ended the year actually in the green. If you look at the median price in Ada County just this past December, we finished the year with a 2.5% year-over-year gain. But the reason we haven't seen prices drop like we would all like to see them drop is that the month supply of inventory still is very low. Just this past month, we had 1.84 months of inventory on the market. Back in August, we had nearly 3 months supply of inventory, and that number has been dropping. Now, the same thing has basically been true in Canyon County, even though Canyon County did see some drop in their prices. The median last month was $408,562, and that was nearly 1/3% drop year over year. So it's about the same. Prices didn't really do anything in Canyon County throughout this entire year. And again, we saw a decrease in the inventory. So again, prices inched up in Ada County, stayed the same in Canyon County, and that is in spite of no change in the interest rate. Now, I can't end the video without giving my prediction for 2025, and I'll just say this. None of us knows, none of us are prophets, so we don't know the future, and we've all been wrong. So take this with a grain of salt. But my realistic prediction for 2025 is that we may end up in the low 6s when it comes to the interest rate. The economy hasn't performed as well as we would have liked it to, and so the Fed is projecting 2 rather than 4 rate cuts in this coming year. If that's the case, if we end up in the 6s, in the low 6s, then I think that would be great. And again, if that's the case, my prediction is that we'll see price increases similar to what we saw this past year. Because throughout this past year, we've been in the 6s and in the 7s for the interest rate. And so if we have a 2.5 to 3.5% price increase year over year in 2025, I think that would be good. I think that would be healthy actually for our economy or our market here. So I'm cautiously optimistic, but we'll just have to wait to see what 2025 brings. Thank you for watching. Tap the like button if this video was helpful. And as always, if you have any questions about real estate or life here in the Treasure Valley, please reach out to me.